Hello, this is Pearls on Tuesday, and today I'm going to do a brief video and instructional piece on creating vignettes. I use that word vignette a lot, and several of you have asked me to clarify it, to explain it, and to give some examples of it. And that's what we're going to do today. Vignettes are small groupings of objects that we can create in a room, in our home, or even outdoors that sends a message and is a visual snapshot of that group of objects, which often have meaning for you and that send a certain message. The easiest way to think about it is, okay, a holiday. If you were to create a Christmas vignette, then the objects that you bring together would have that commonality. Christmas would be the commonality. And it would be sending a message or creating a snapshot of something surrounding Christmas that you want to portray. Creating vignettes is also a wonderful way to use and display your collections. Even if you only have 3, 4, or 5 of a given item to make a collection, creating a vignette with it is a great way to display it so that you and your family and your guests can enjoy it, and so that it isn't just stuck in a cabinet or up on a shelf or in a drawer. So next we're going to look at how to actually construct a vignette and look at some do's and don'ts, and hopefully that will help you feel more comfortable creating vignettes of your own. Okay, let's get started. I have a clean slate here. I'm using as a table or a countertop this black chippy bench. Okay, and we're going to create a vignette right here on this bench. Let's say that you have a small collection of Hummel figurines that you would like to display. I'm going to show you 4 of mine. I have a little boy standing upright. I have a little girl standing upright. They are the same size. And I have a matching set of a girl and a boy sitting on a fence. Now, my color scheme is already there. They are all this muted blue and green and red and orange, as Hummels always are. So I'm going to keep my color scheme in that family. In other words, I'm not going to add neon green or hot pink. I'm going to keep the theme with these muted colors. Now, the very first thing that we want to think about after we have our color scheme going on, we want to think about an anchor object. All right, what is my anchor object going to be? I have these 4 figurines, and I want to display them, but this isn't so interesting, so I want to create a vignette that is interesting and eye-catching. Well, an anchor object could be, for instance, this wooden box. It is in keeping with kind of the theme, It is in keeping with the color scheme, and it would serve as a riser. Another thing about creating a vignette, we want to create varying heights. We do not want everything to be on the same level. So if I were to use this wooden box as my anchor piece, meaning my strongest piece that holds it all together, then what I could do is set my anchor piece down and then start creating from there. So I have one level here, and now I have a lower level around here to work with. Let's say I want to put my little girl off to the side here, my standing little girl. That would probably be a better place to put her rather than right in the middle. Okay, we want, along with varying heights, we want the eye to fall in various angles. We don't want the eye to see horizontally flat or only vertical. We want to create nice lines that go from high to low, or that float down from a high point to a low point. So in other words, we wouldn't take all four of these and just stack them up on the box. We want to use the varying heights. Now we also want to create some depth so that it doesn't just look like all of the items are just right up there in the front. We want to create the illusion of lots of space, even though the top of our box is only 4.5, 5 inches in width. So we can do that by adding something even taller. Here is another wooden piece. This is actually a salt keeper. And always keep in mind, things that can open can serve lots of different purposes, okay? I'm gonna leave this one closed for now. I'm going to sit it here on the side rather than right in the middle. And I'm going to add, let's say, our little boy to the top of that, all right? So I'm starting to create height, and I'm sticking with the theme. I'm beginning to make some depth in that I think I'm going to add this little fella off to the side, and perhaps our little girl right here close to him. I have now created a line. I've created some depth. He is farther back than she is. But look at all of this blank space right here in the front. Look at what a difference it makes if I simply add an object of interest, which is a little brass frame of some children. They happen to be children in my husband's family, and a little glittery star that I can try to put right next to her. I can get it to stand up. There we go. What a difference that makes. I can also use things like, for instance, this little vintage children's block. Okay, I could put it right here on the edge. I could put her on top of it, except that makes them almost the same height. So I'm not really crazy about that. But you can see how we're trying to create some depth. We have our anchor piece, we have our color scheme, and we always want to think in odd numbers, 3, 5, 7, and so forth. We have 4 Hummels. But then when we add a few of these other pieces, we can keep the eye involved and keep with that odd number rule. Florists use that rule. More than likely, if they're making an arrangement, they're going to add 3 of a certain type of flower or 5 of a certain type of flower rather than 2 or 4. You may even want to take away one of the Hummels, put something else down here to balance it out, and then really keeping with the rule of odds. But when you add other pieces in, you can count that in your vignette as far as your odd and even pieces. One thing that I want to point out is the best way to bring a vignette together is to ground it with containing it in a certain space, whether it's a tray or a plate or a basket, but even with, for instance, a crocheted doily. I'm going to show you the difference that this makes just putting this doily down. And of course, whenever I use something like this, I want to drape it. Pull it back a little bit. I want to drape it a little bit. That gives it movement. But if I put this here, now, you can already see how it's giving our eye and our mind boundaries. Now I can go back and put our little girl and put our little boy here off to the side and put our little picture frame back and our bit of whimsy here with the star. And if I wanted to add the block somewhere, I certainly could. So you can see how that created a very nice vignette using all of those rules, color scheme, height, anchor object, creating lines, creating movement and depth, and keeping with odd numbers the best you can to add dimension and to keep our eye moving. Using those odd numbers keeps our eye moving. In a minute, I'll clean this up and we will create one more vignette. Now we're going to work on creating our next vignette, and this one is going to have a theme of a kitchen. Okay, let's imagine that this is going to be a vignette that someone is going to display in their kitchen, whether on a counter or the bar, or could be even in the middle of a table. So let's talk about what are we going to use to ground it. In the previous vignette, we used that doily. In this vignette, we're going to use this cake stand. It is a jadeite cake stand, so it is kind of almost like green milk glass. It has kind of a vintage feel and look about it with the scalloped edges. So we're going to use this as our grounding piece to set the perimeters of the vignette. Now let's look at some of the kitchen objects that we have that we can play around with. First of all, we have a vintage tea container. It is metal. It is old and kind of chippy. Actually, it isn't tea, it's Drosty's cocoa. And the top opens. Okay, so we want to just look at all the different possibilities of the pieces that we have to play around with. We have a set of these copper, they're actually measuring cups of sorts. We have 4 of them. This one doesn't stand up very well, but they're copper and they are kitchen items, and we can display those as needed. I have a couple of nice cookie cutters, a gingerbread person and a heart. They also have a vintage feel to them. I have a couple of small silver bowls. I have a little rolling pin, excuse me, that looks like could be used for a doll. I have some large cinnamon sticks bound together with some raffia. I have a little broom that is one of those little cinnamon brooms. Still has a great cinnamon scent to it. I have a couple of white candles. And I have a couple of little pieces of faux foliage. This has a little bit of a sparkle to it. And I have a little pair of brass shoes. These are actually tiny little ashtrays from way back when. But I pulled them out because I felt like the color scheme worked. And then maybe just a few random smaller cinnamon sticks and so forth. And I have a handkerchief that is crocheted beautifully on the edges with a pretty green color that my grandmother made. So if you look at these things and we're talking about our color scheme, I think I've chosen things that the color scheme all fits. Nothing is popping out at you and making you think, oh, that doesn't go with the others. You know, those workbooks we all had as children, which one of these does not belong with the others? We can have objects of interest. That's a good thing. But something that looks totally like it doesn't fit is going to be just a distraction. So I don't think we have that here. So let's get started. All right. We're going to put our anchor piece here on our counter. Pretend we're in our kitchen. And then remember, we're going to give it some movement by adding something that goes over the edge. It creates a bit of informality, something that looks like perhaps it just fell there or was placed there by chance. But draping it over gives it all those elements and movement, and the color is perfect. So we're going to start with that. Now, what are we going to use as our anchor piece? At first thought, I'm thinking that this cocoa container would be the anchor piece. So let's go with that at first. Am I going to put it right here in the middle? No, I'm probably going to put it a little off to the side. Remember that we want to start thinking now about creating angles, creating height differences, and creating depth. Even though we are confined for the most part to this circle, although remember, there is room down here that we can take advantage of. So we have our anchor piece here, and how about if we set that off by putting one of our copper measuring cups to the side, okay? Because you can see right now I'm trying to build this. But now I see that a better fit might be the next size, because I was thinking it could slide under, but it can't. So let's go to the next size. And how about that? I like that, okay? And then we can place the others up this way, creating some varying heights. And how about taking one of our silver bowls, turning it upside down? Remember, we always want to not only think about using things in the way that it was intended, but also looking at it and saying, what else could I do with this? What other uses could it serve? So I'm going to use it as a little riser. I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to put the anchor piece, and that even creates more height, and I like that. Now let's look at where we might be able to stick this gingerbread man. Okay, he will stand up by himself, and because he is see-through, if we put him here in the front, we can look through him and see some of the things in the back. Of course, if this is on a counter, you're going to be looking at it from the top anyway. So I don't think that's actually blocking anything. And how about my other cookie cutter kind of leaning this way, almost positioning it as if it too has kind of just been placed or fallen there. Now, how about our little rolling pin? I could put it right in there, and that kind of creates some depth and some height. We'll keep it there for the time being and see how we like it. I could take my other little silver bowl and wedge it here in the middle, and maybe fill it with a few of our little cinnamon sticks. And what about our bigger cinnamon sticks? Well, perhaps we could put those here off to the side, helping to prop up that heart cookie cutter even more, and of course coming off the edge of the cake stand helps with that feeling of movement. Look at these little candles. We could do something like that. Okay. We could even open, no, I think they're too short for that. We could put those in there. These little faux pieces of foliage I like because it adds a little sparkle. It really does something for the texture. So what about putting those in here and maybe just one of the candles? I think I like that. that really changed the vignette for me because it added a different kind of texture to the objects. I still have my little shoes. Maybe my little shoes can go down here underneath. And of course I could put a couple of cinnamon sticks in there as well if I wanted to kind of join it together or create some commonality. I still have my little guy here. Now I don't have to use everything. I can, but I don't have to. He could come right in here. Didn't do anything with the little broom, the cinnamon broom. Of course, it could lean something like that, especially if you're going to be able to see 360 degrees around your vignette. But I want to show you what happens when you decide to add a little light. I have a little tea light, battery operated tea light. And if I were to put that anywhere really, but let's try it out right in the middle where the light, it can sparkle off of that silver. I think that looks really adorable. Whoops! This is the one that doesn't sit up very well. So let's let it do what it wants to do. Let's put it down like that. So I'm going to bring the camera in a little closer so that you can see it up close and see it from all the various angles. And I think that that would be a darling vignette for a kitchen using objects that you already had, objects of interest, and just being creative with your use of those objects. And now I am going to share with you a few still photos showing how vignettes are used in homes of varying decorating styles and decor, just to give you some ideas and for you to look for those elements that we talked about, color scheme, angles, varying heights and textures, groups of odd numbering objects, and opportunities to create movement within the vignette. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, Pearls on Tuesday.